Hi there, my name's Andy Young and I'm one of the automotive lecturers down at Unitech in Auckland, New Zealand, and welcome to my Andy Mechanic YouTube channel. Now, on this short video, I'm going to show you how to measure oil clearance on a bearing journal, or between a bearing journal and a cap. In this case, off a camshaft journal and one of the caps in the head. Now, you can't get feeler gauges and stuff in that kind of thing, and the oil clearance, the tiny gap, you couldn't really measure with a feeler gauge anyway. So what we use is something called a plastic gauge, and it comes in little strips like this, and if you're affluent enough, well, this one's called flexi gauge, but it's the same kind of stuff. Plastic gauge is obviously a brand name, as is flexi gauge. Okay, now on the actual sleeve that contains the plastic gauge, and the plastic gauge is a little tiny, you'll see it shortly, it's inside there, it's a little tiny slither of plastic. What we do is we chop off a little bit, and the little bit wants to be about the same length as the width of the cap. Now before you start, you must make sure that the camshaft journals are all clean, and the two halves of the outer bearing surface, that's the scallop, the machined part of the head, and the machined part of the cap, and the mating surfaces between the cap and the head are all super clean. Because if you've got any dirt, grit or bits of old gasket and stuff in there, when you come to clamp that cap down, it's not going to sit in its true position and you're going to get a false reading. In addition to that, you need to make sure that you've got the right cap on the right mating surface on the head, and they are all numbered, and I've cleaned this one up a little bit so hopefully you can see it. You can see an arrow. Well, the arrow always points to the front of the engine. The front of the engine is usually where your cam belt is, and it's number 1 cylinder, 2, 3, 4 and so on. So that arrow points to the front of the engine, and on here it's got an I and a number 1. So I stands for intake and number 1 stands for the first cap. If you get the next one, that one's got an arrow and an I too, so that's the second cap. So fortunately the engine manufacturers do help us. So if you get some numpty who's pulled an engine apart and hasn't laid everything out as they should do, there's still a chance you can work out where things are supposed to go. Because these are line bored. Basically all these caps are bolted into place and then it's machined in one go. So these caps are matched to the other half that's part of the head. If you mix them all up, when you bolt them up, then your clearances are going to be all over the place, and there's a good chance that your camshaft won't even turn. So make sure you get in the right place. Okay, so now I'll show you how to use the plastic gauge to take an oil clearance reading. Right, first thing we need to do is to cut a piece of plastic gauge. Now, they are really fiddly, and I'm forever dropping these things on the floor. And this one, there it is. Okay, all right. So it's only approximate, you know. Okay, so about cut that bit off there. Look. Now it's got a scale in inches on the cardboard, and it's got a scale, a metric scale as well, and that will become apparent once we've done the measurement, so to speak. That's what we compare the squashed plastic gauge to get a reading. Okay, so inside there, you see that? Oh yeah, you can just see it. All right, there is a piece of plastic gauge, and we have to be super delicate. So I'm just going to cut that open with my scissors, and there you go. God, can you see that before it falls on the floor? Yes, just. There you go, look. That is what we're playing with. Now for a mechanic, there you are, look. That's a little bit on the small side, and our big chubby fingers, which most of us have, do struggle. So, like there, look. So I've got it just now mounted on the plastic. I'm going to lay that across the journal that I'm going to be inspecting, measuring, on the camshaft. Here we go. Okay, now this is incredibly fiddly. In fact, I'm going to lose the glove because gloves are okay for some things, but not everything. I'm just going to get the plastic gauge and I'm going to lay it across the top of the journal. Oh, that was pretty lucky. Okay. And that's where it, oh shit, that's where it needs to go. Jeez. Perfect. Okay. Now you get your journal and make sure you've got the arrow pointing towards the front of the engine. And we're just going to very carefully lay that on there. And then we're going to get two of the original bolts, put those in there. And we have to tighten those up. Oh, look at that already, look. The minute you take your glove off. Okay, we've got to tighten those up to the torque setting. Now, the torque setting for these, according to the Toyota manual, is 19 Newton meters. Oh, it's raining again. Okay, so we'll just tweak that up very, very evenly to 19 Newton meters. Now it's very important during this process that you don't rotate the camshaft. There we go. Okay, so we can undo those now. And you just got to be a bit delicate doing this kind of stuff because you can very easily move stuff that shouldn't be moved. Right. Okay, and if we now lift that off very carefully, the plastic gauge on this particular one is stuck to the inside of the cap. So you can see now that really thin bit of plastic has been, almost like plasticine really, has been squashed flat, and it's the width that it's squashed flat by indicates how much of a clearance. The more it's been squashed, the less of a clearance. Now, if we get our little scale and we can compare that to the scale. Whoa, the wind's picking up. Okay, so you can see the plastic gauge as it's squashed on there. I'm trying to keep the whole thing in focus for you. There we go. Less glove, I think. There we go. Right. And now we've got on the actual card that the whole thing came in, these different widths shown by the white and the green, and you've just got to choose the one that looks about the same, and I would go with that. So I've got a measurement there of a clearance that represents 0.05 millimeters of clearance. 0.05. Okay, let's see what the spec says. Okay, so according to Mr. Toyota, the oil clearance on those bearing journals should be somewhere between 0.025 to 0.062 standard. But there is a wear limit. As long as they're under 0.1 millimeters, we're all good. We can still use it, but it's getting close to the end of its life. So we got 0.05 or thereabouts, which is within the standard spec. I would hesitate to guess that it was slightly bigger than that, maybe 0.06, but you know. The bottom line is that bearing journal still has an oil clearance that is within specification. So it's okay. Perfect. If it wasn't okay, then it's a combination between wear, it could be a wear in the aluminium head and in the cap, and also wear on the camshaft journal itself. And it's the combination of that wear that gives us that additional oil clearance over and above what it was designed to have. But we're okay, we're in spec, so that's a pass. And working on engines takes ages to check because I've got all those journals to check. I'm just going to do one to camera, but I have all of them to do, and there's 10, so that's 9 more to go, which takes time. 5 minutes a piece. That's an hour's work. Fair enough. So there you go. That's how you use Plastigauge to check for oil clearance on bearing journals. Places where you can't get things like feeler gauges, because you just can't. You can't get in there. Okay. Now, obviously, there's no point in doing these checks unless you've got the manufacturer's specs. And realistically, you wouldn't even bother to pull an engine apart and to try and decide whether it's still okay to rebuild or not without having specifications, because you'd be very surprised. Sometimes things can look absolutely fine when you measure them, absolutely not fine at all. They're worn out. Okay, well, just another helpful hint from Andy Mechanic. If you've got any questions or comments, then please do leave them down the bottom and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you'd like to subscribe, please do. It'd be great to have you on board. Click the subscribe button, but also do click the little gear next to it and choose to turn on notifications. And that way you'll get an email or whatever it is that you choose to get whenever there's a new video goes up on the channel. And hey, it might be of interest to you. If it's not, don't worry about it. Just don't watch it. But if it is, do watch it and have some fun. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Cheers. Over and out.